America as a failed social experiment.
How do we tell this story in a way that builds the kind of emotional momentum that colorblind ideology built?
So many young brothers and sisters of the younger generation find themselves so far removed from the best of their past.
What are we going to make out of the nothing we've been given? How do you envision possibility? Hey everyone, welcome and thanks for joining us on The Tightrope, where we engage in rich dialogue and we try to keep our balance on tough issues. After we have a talk today with a really special guest, we're going to have in our office hours a special segment on the recent news about ICE detention center hysterectomies, so stick around for that. But before we get started with our guest, I want to introduce my esteemed co-host and dear friend and the greatest intellectual on the planet, Dr. Cornel West. How you doing, Cornel? How you feeling these days?
I tell you, I'm still swinging. I'm still trying to bear witness. I'm swinging like Duke Ellington and Ella Fitzgerald is going to lead directly into our magnificent brother who we talked to that we won't reveal at the moment.
I know, aren't we lucky? They don't know how lucky they are.
No, we in the genius zone. We in the genius zone.
Yep. We got them all to ourselves.
That's true. But how you doing? How's your precious ones doing? Everybody holding on still?
Well, yeah, everybody's holding on, but I've been really thinking a lot about, this crazy crisis world we're in right now. And not just trying to survive day to day, but beginning to feel like the longer term effects might be pretty intense. I'm actually worrying about a kind of collective loss of like our way of being in the world. You can't go month after month after month on lockdown with a maniac in the White House, with fires burning, with, people in the streets being shot down. I mean, it's just a lot to live with, the hunger, the unemployment, the economy, the threats of more law and order, which is basically just more incarceration and more violence. I'm just a little afraid. What are you thinking about?
That's real. That's very real. I hear what you're saying. But you and I know, as black folk, we should never be surprised by evil or paralyzed by despair. That we have known every possible catastrophe, every possible calamity. We look unflinchingly at it, be honest and candid about it, try to preserve the integrity of our souls and keep on moving.
Right.
And so there's a sense in which, the blues now has become so thoroughly saturated on every level of the American empire, every level of American society. Mm-hmm. The psychic, the social, the economic, the political, the civic, the spiritual, and everything. So we got spiritual warfare, political warfare, economic warfare. Now we know as black folk, we've had to deal with this because that's why we're blues people at our best.
Right.
And so the question becomes then, how do we tell the kind of truths about the ugliness, look at it candidly, but still generate the kind of vitality, vibrancy, the energy in such a way that our creativity is not truncated and our compassion and our willingness to fight for truth and justice is not dampened.
Yeah.
And that is once that spirit starts getting dampened and the fire goes out, then it's just a crack house across the board. Everybody just subsumed. But the good news is it's like a whole lot of folks, they're not falling into the nihilism, the cynicism, the pessimism, the despair. But the ugliness is real. Oh, yeah. The ugliness is very, very real.
And you, not only do we need those incredible traditions of survival, right, in this moment, but we also need people who can put into words what we're really feeling right now, and not only where we need to go, but that sense of recognition of where we are. There are few people with that level of gift, but we are unbelievably lucky today because we have someone for whom these kinds of words come very easily, and this kind of insight is his hallmark. And so I'm going to make sure we have a lot of time to talk to this guest and do a very brief introduction and let everybody know who he is. But we're very lucky to have him with us. universally referenced as one of the greatest hip hop artists of all time. In my opinion, the greatest hip hop of all artist of all time. Rakim first exploded onto the New York scene in 1986 with the iconic Eric B. is President single and the album Paid in Full. With its unprecedented lyricism and complex rhyme patterns, the release, along with a carefully curated mixture of conscious spirituality, streetwise braggadocio, and trend-setting fashion, and an interior critical intelligence, marked a turning point in the hip-hop culture, raising the bar for future MCs and revolutionizing the form globally. One of my absolute greatest just memories is remembering the first time I heard Paid in Full and was like, oh, this is a new thing. I'm like, oh no, this is about to be on. This game is on. Anyway, we have Rakim, the king lyricist, right here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us on the Tightrope.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the welcome, Matt. It's an honor to be here. Tricia and Dr. West, man, I'm glad to be here amongst your presence, man. It's a blessing.
Yes, well, goodness gracious. I mean, I'm going to let you start, Cornel. I know you've got plenty you want to say to Brother Rakim. So.
Yeah, I tell you, no, but I mean, words fail you when you're
I know, we're out of words.
In the presence of this kind of genius. We've had Sonny Rollins, we had Bootsy Collins, we had Noam Chomsky. That's the genius zone, no doubt about that.
Yes, sir.
But when you're talking about the greatest of all time, I mean, this is the level of Muhammad Ali. This is the level of Malcolm X. We talking about folks who have a cultivated vision and imagination and discipline that is grounded in the greatest tradition of spiritual fortitude and artistic creativity in the modern world. I'm talking about the Black musical tradition. And then when you get a new genre, Sister Tricia wrote the classic on the emergence of hip hop, Black Noise, 1992, was it, Sister? 94. I remember reading it in 92, 94.
Yeah, you did. You got an early copy.
I got an early copy of it. But when you have an example like Brother Rakim, what we're really talking about is what has gone into the makings of such a grand example at the highest level of excellence. We know that Willie and Cynthia got something to do with it. Precious parents. Oh, it's so rich.
Yes.
Oh, indeed. We know that the peers got something to do with it. But tell us something first about your calling, my brother.
It's interesting, man. Coming up, very influenced by music. Music ruled the household. You know, my brothers and sisters is all, you know, very into music deeply. My mother sang everything from jazz to opera when she was coming up in Brooklyn. And my father, he just had the ear. You know, he knew what was good, what sounded good. And yesterday was his birthday, so I wanna say happy birthday to my father.
Happy birthday, Mr. Griffin. Happy birthday, Mr. Griffin.
You know, I sat up all day yesterday, man, and I worked all day. I was putting together my studio, so I just felt good that, you know, the things that he taught me, and even what I didn't learn from him indirect, you know, the things that I watched him do, it made me feel like I can do anything. So as I was working yesterday, man, he just stayed in my mind all day. Felt good about it, and happy birthday, Pop, you know. But it was just a blessing growing up in that household, man. You know, I was the youngest in the family. So I got everything, you know, poured onto me, you know, from my brothers and sisters, my mother and father. But I think that what I learned when I was coming up, you know, musically, prepared me for what I got into. And when hip hop came out, you know, I played instruments in school. I played saxophone, and I always liked to get on a drum set. So when hip hop came out, I felt like it was there for me. You know what I mean? It was the young music, but you know, the young generation. And I just felt like everything that I learned prepared me for that. So I started, you know, dabbling in it, and you know, developed a real love for it right away. And I just felt that it was for me because of where I came from, my background, and what I knew.
But Tell us what inspired you to be so invested in so much of a higher level of lyricism than was going on at the time. I mean, you literally come out with a level of complex rhyme schemes for which there was no precedent in the music itself. I mean, you could have easily been twice as good as everybody who was out at the time you came out with half the work you put in. So what were you like, what was your guiding principle there, and how did you find that level of excellence and complexity, you know, before it actually existed? I mean, basically.
Well, I think it was a number of things that contributed to that. My love for music when I was young was to me, I used to wonder how and like why I understood it so well. You know, I would listen to songs and it'd make me feel, you know, a way. If it was Marvin Gaye, you know, Stevie Wonder, I understood the words. And I think that, and knowing how that impacted, you know, myself, I knew that words had a way of communicating, you know, in a deep way. So I tried to, you know, understand that and use words and phrases and say things that, you know, meant something and kind of, you know, definitely inspire people. But just to know that, you know, how important placing your words were. You know what I mean? When you say things and also what you say before and after that phrase, it has a deeper impact. So I kind of, you know, grew up on that. So it was distilled in me. And I have to pay a big amount to that, to Islam as well. I study Islam. And it taught me how to communicate. It taught me how to express myself. It taught me how to not only translate my feelings, but what I felt, you know, the world was feeling. And that's what I thought was more important, to try to see vicariously through the world's eyes and speak. You know what I mean? And I think these things contributed to me having an understanding of, you know, what was going on, what the temperature was around the world, what people was thinking, what they liked, what they didn't like. And, you know, I used all these things. And of course, my mother and father taught me that words, you know, words can hurt. You know what I mean? Words can also make you feel good. Words can make you think. You know, words can make you mad. You know, they would say things to me that was so direct and to the point whenever something was going on. Sometimes, you know, when I was young, I didn't understand what they were saying, but they would say it. And later on, I would understand it. And it taught me, you know, how to speak even to my kids and how to use certain words that I know will impact them and they will, even if they didn't understand it at the time, they would try to understand it. And that journey itself is the importance of that understanding. So, you know, just knowing that, I always try to just you know, reach people knowing that, you know, or them knowing that I was just like them. You know?
Right. My dear brother, you're not only one of the great artists of the 20th century, but you are one of the great spiritual seekers. So it connects truth as well as beauty, as well as goodness, as well as God. You raising questions, who is God in hip hop song? I mean, that's not an ordinary kind of thing. But I want people to see this. I want people to see this. Sweat the technique. It's a classic reflection on the artist, on his artistry. When you turn to page 137, he raises a fundamental question, which is, when you let go of your flow, you ask the question, what would John Coltrane do? He's my musical North Star. He showed me another way. What is your relation as original artist, spiritual seeker, to the great John Coltrane as great artist and spiritual seeker?
I grew up I fell in love with John Coltrane at a young age. I might have been in, I think, second grade. Coming up in elementary school, we was allowed to play instruments, but they gave us recorders at first. My older brother, Stephen, he played the saxophone. And I wanted to do whatever my brother did. And of course, I wanted to play the sax. And listening to John Coltrane and just, knowing how complicated it was to make those, riffs and hit those notes. I fell in love with his artistry. When I was able to get my sax in 4th grade, I started playing the sax. But I used to steal my brother's sax a little earlier than that and play whatever he played, But when I got my instrument in 4th grade, I really understood Coltrane because I had, of course I was just beginning, but I realized how complicated it was to play that sax and to get that sound to sound like that. Of course, I would try to mimic certain things that I heard, and the notes sound right, but the sound didn't sound like Coltrane. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
the dignity and the scope and breath of that sound. Yeah.
Rolled up. You know what I mean? I knew he was doing something special. As I went on, I started listening to a lot of his music and just realized how different he was from everybody else and how unique he was. And one day, me and my brother, the sax player Stevie, he's on my albums. We call him Stevie Blast. One day we was listening, and one of my favorite songs, My Favorite Things, John Coltrane. And it got to a certain point, Dr. West.
Yeah.
And he played 2 notes at one time. That's impossible. Impossible. Knowing how to play the sax, that's impossible. You know what I mean? So knowing how deep he was, how creative he was, how mental he was, I said to myself, well, what would Coltrane do? If you're trying to be innovative and take things to the next level, how could you do that? So I said, what would and then I said, well, Coltrane played 2 notes at one time. So what could you do? You know what I mean? What could you bring to the table that, nothing, I don't think nothing can, be equivalent to that. I can't say 2 words at one time. But just knowing how he pushed the envelope, I know I had to do something that was just as groundbreaking as things that Coltrane did.
But your lyrics of fury, is the hip hop what Giant Steps is the jazz.
And Giant Steps, I love that song. I love that song. You know what I mean? Bang, 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 bang. You know what I mean?
That's right.
And listening to jazz when I was coming up, I didn't know that I was learning an important lesson for what I was doing, or what I would be doing. Jazz taught me how to manipulate space and time. Growing up, you listen to songs like Take 5 and trying to count that measure by measure, you realize it's not like the R&B songs that I hear. It's not 4/4 time. So I started listening and started realizing some of the timing patterns that jazz was using. And my oldest brother, Ronnie, he plays piano, and he used to teach me how to count jazz time. So he said, you got to find the 1. You know what I mean? And he said, you got to count. And then he said, if you get back to the one and you ain't at the one, you counted wrong. He said, listen to the rhythm, and you have to learn how to count. So I learned how to start counting jazz timing when I was young. So when I got into hip hop, 4/4 time was nothing to me. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
It was like the most simplest format of music to me. So I was like, you know what I mean? I said, well, if I got this much time, one measure, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. I said I could say so many syllables or so many things in that one bar. So knowing jazz, I learned how to, I call it manipulating time, because I was able to put different, like multiple syllables in measures that normally wouldn't fit if you didn't understand time and space.
Time and space.
You know what I mean? So it helped me create rhythms and syncopated rhythms and styles with my words alone. So I would take that and place it on the beat where it fits perfect. You know what I mean? And cause it's a whole different, you know what I mean? And I always call myself an instrument. So when I hear music, I would say, like, how could I join in? You know, it's like a jazz band. If they let me get a solo, what would I do? How would I play? You know what I mean? What would I say?
Rich. That's rich.
So I always try to be an instrument to the music so that I fit in. You know what I mean? And everything was, uniform. So that, but I contribute that to jazz, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great description, Rakim, because you're not only able to do so much rhythmically within the 4/4, it's also what you do with the complexity of the words. So it's the construction of the rhyme and its relationship to the rhythm, right? That has that principle that you're describing around manipulating time and the complexity of what you're doing. But I still don't understand how you. Reason you had to name your memoir "Sweat the Technique" is I got my copy over here too, Cornel.
You're not the only one.
Right? You're not the only one with the copy of the hardcover.
I'm not the. That's right.
You're not the only one. You're not the only one.
Thank you.
And,
hope you enjoy.
I totally enjoyed it, and totally enjoyed it. But why you had to say "sweat the technique" is because you can tell us over and over again, and we still can't seem to figure out how to do it. It's like it's something. It's really, I mean, that's why Cornel's point about genius is so important. It's not just a throwaway thing. It's about how you can hear. And what you're able to construct. It feels so effortless when I mimic your rhymes, which I've done for 25, 30 years. Unsuccessfully, I might say. I was doing it this morning. I was like, I still sound whack. And I didn't even write it. I'm just trying to mimic it. And you realize, okay, he had to come up with all of that, right, in the first place. So did you have a musical lyrical idol in jazz? I know you mentioned Frank Sinatra and some others. Were there people whose way of constructing or using time or using intonation or using words and freestyle or improvisation that were, in addition to Coltrane, of course, but were there any others on the lyrical side that you found inspiring?
Luckily I was a fan of a little bit of everything. My mother loved Sarah Vaughan. She loved Ella Fitzgerald. And just like I remember when I heard Lullaby Broadway. I was a young kid, but the way the words kind of came across, I understood and like I can see what it was about, and it automatically puts you in a feeling of what she was talking about. But something about the way jazz artists wrote songs back in the day, it was melodic, but it was also to the point. They would get their point across, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Besides the music. So I
Right.
always understood, you know, the melodic part of it, but the message part of it and how to get your point across. And jazz did it distinctively, you know what I mean? And you know, just you know, and like I referenced a couple times Frank Sinatra, this song he did, Fly Me to the Moon.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I mean. It's to the point, it's to the nerve, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's
It
not
cuts
just
right to the
music.
core.
Right. To me, it's not just music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's expression, it's communication, it's you know, more than just tap your foot to this. Understand what I'm saying and make sure that it has value to it. So I try to
Right.
write,
Mhm.
you know, I try
Yes.
to write in that same way,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
The music,
Mhm.
if you put that rhythm on it, it'll fit with the music. But if you put the meaning there too, then they won't have a problem with it because it's in a melodic feel. So I
Mm-hmm.
always snuck the consciousness in, you know what I mean? Where
Mm-hmm.
they'd be
Yeah.
partying so
Yeah.
hard and just repeating the words, and sometimes they wouldn't even understand what I was saying until later on. But
Right.
But see, I'm
um,
thinking also of like Mahogany, Mr. Melody,
yes,
where
yes,
you got a melodic dimension and you got a soulfulness that's mellow alongside the veracity and intensity of your lyrics. I mean, we were talking before you were on about the James Brown 1971. He decided to go on the road for 45 straight days. And James Brown is the greatest of all time of soul and funk
yes, sir.
music. Now, oh, Lord,
Yes,
we
sir.
ain't got no language for that genius. But he decided
That's
to
right.
go on the road with the dramatics and the
Uh,
stylistics. And
mm,
people wonder, well, hey, how could somebody so funky, you got Clyde Stepperfield, you got Bootsy, he with Russell Tompkins Jr., he's with Ron Banks and DJ Reynolds and stuff. What's going on? Well, there's a soulfulness that's soft and mellow and cool.
yes, sir.
That's part of James Brown's project. So when people think of Rakim, they think of unbelievable coolness and funk and soul and scope and breadth and depth. But tell us something about your relation to JB, man, to James Brown.
Oh my goodness, that guy there, man, incredible. Like you said, he's on a planet of his own, man. And his music was so different. You know, when he came out, he stood out, you know, right away. And to get to know his theory, that's, you know, like I loved his music for years, but then when I heard his theory, it blew me away.
Mm.
The movie also gave me a lot of insight on, you know, his theory. But James Brown thing was on the one. You say, you know, on the one. And when he broke it down, all of his music is on the one. Like I was speaking on before, measures, 4 bars. James Brown is the 4 bar king. Every 4 bars, he goes right back to that same thing that just blew your mind a second ago. So it's like he don't give you a second to breathe. It's bang, dan 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 bang, dan 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 you know what I mean? Yeah, you know what I mean? And it just keeps
Yeah,
coming back around. He don't
yeah,
give you
yeah.
a minute to relax. It just keeps coming back. But his music was so different when we was coming up. As a rapper, you would look for, you know, those soulful beats. And, you know, just imagine, you know, you telling the DJ or the DJ asking you, well, what do you want to rap to? First thing you would say was James Brown. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Anything James Brown, because it was just so funky, so
Mm.
soulful. The horns, the drums, the hits, the screams. I always
Yeah.
said James Brown made hip hop music before we did. You know what I mean? Because
Mm,
it just
mm.
fit hip hop so well. You know, especially in the late '70s, early '80s. James Brown personified hip hop.
Completely.
So
I
yes,
mean,
Yeah.
in many ways,
Yeah.
that what you're describing as him not giving you a chance to breathe and coming back around in 4 bars is like a
yeah,
sample. It's like,
yes,
you know, what
exactly.
DJ
That's
Kool Herc
true.
did with the break. It was extending
That's
the
right.
break.
That's
That's
true.
right. And
Yeah.
that's why it just fits so good. And it was hip hop. And
Yeah.
we patterned hip hop off of James Brown. His music, his drums, and even the screams and the grunts.
Mm-hmm.
It you know, without saying words, it let you know how you felt about the music, and it made the listener feel the same way. You know what I mean? So he kind of let us know how to uh be boisterous in a lot of ways. Um,
Mm-hmm.
to not to be not to be funny. I didn't understand a lot of the words James Brown was saying when I was coming up. It
No,
took a long time for me to, you know what I mean? But we didn't
I
care. You know what I mean? We didn't
That's,
care. It
We
was so
still not
funky.
sure.
that's
That's
true.
right. That's
Some
right.
of them we still haven't
It's
figured
so
out, brother.
funky.
Some of them we still haven't figured out.
That's right. You know what I mean? It was just so
That's true.
funky, man. You just you sang along, you grunted along, you try to do his dances, and that's what an impactful artist does, man. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Like you know, like to this day, Michael Jackson. I don't know
Yeah.
how he does it, but every kid from the age of 2 knows Michael Jackson.
Right.
You don't have to be from his generation. You know, I have a grandson, just be 3 in a couple months. He knows Michael Jackson. He could barely talk, and that shows you that man did something incredible. You
True.
can't deny good music. You know what I
That's the
mean?
truth.
Right.
And
That's true.
when it has a certain vibe, you know, of course, Michael Jackson music was, you know, it was heartfelt. It was happy. It was party music. That's what kids love.
Mm-hmm.
That's what kids love. You can't they can't deny it. They hear Michael Jackson song and you know the feeling of it. And kids, you know, they're the most truest people on the earth right now
Mm.
because they
It's,
still,
it's, it's
you know
so
what I mean?
honest. They're so
That's
Yeah.
right.
honest.
That's
They're
right. You
so
know what I mean?
candid.
They are.
And they feel vibration. You know what I
That's
mean? Like the
true.
kids, they can you know, feel the vibration or feel, you know, just that feeling, man. And you
Yeah.
can't lie to a kid. So, you know, it's
That's
certain
exactly
music
right.
and you know what I mean?
Oh, should we
Yeah.
Certain
tell our
music.
Yeah.
audience, go listen to Michael Jackson sing Can You Remember by Tom Bell and William Hart of the Delphonics when he was 10 years old. The
Uh,
level of soulfulness, sophistication, like Who's Loving
incredible.
You, what was on that first album with Smokey Robinson.
Incredible. That's right.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
But again, he's mellow, he's
It's
silky in that way. But where are we now at the present though? We got Brother Kendrick, we got J. Cole, we got Nicki. I mean, where is hip hop right now, man?
I'm hoping it's at a turning point, especially with the temperature of the United States and all over the world right now. This is the best time to be conscious again with music. This is the best time to tell your story from the world's point of view. We all are impacted from what's going on right now. Um, this is I'm hoping it's a good time for hip hop. Artists that may have never thought of saying anything conscious or positive are thinking that now. Even if they're just explaining to us that they see what's going on, is a
mhm.
change for hip hop. You know what I mean?
Mm, mm,
So I'm hoping that the things that's going on wake hip hop up a little bit, and it gets a little more conscious. So I'm gonna try to contribute to that. I'm working on some music now, and I'm looking forward to hip hop 2021. You know what I mean?
Mm.
We were blessed to have Sister Rhapsody on. She's serious. She's serious.
Yes. You know what I mean? And
oh yeah,
we need more artists like that for not only the young ladies but for hip hop. You know what I mean? It's refreshing to hear young ladies speak like that, and to have just to have that sense of understanding of what's going on. I think a lot of the young female consumers should pay attention, and I think hit the reset button and listen to more people like that, man, because we need that right now.
Yeah, we do. I appreciate your framing here because it's a very positive, forward-looking, aspirational way of saying what I would say from a grumpy perspective, which, I need to be more aspirational. I need different company than myself because I'm a little frustrated. I think, what happened. I mean, I'm about 5 years older than you, and I'm from the Bronx, Harlem in the Bronx. And, I remember hip hop on the playgrounds and the basketball courts. And I remember the parties, and I remember what we would now call the golden age. And to me, it wasn't about trying to tell people political messages. People like to say, oh, it's about political consciousness. No, it was about how to live and survive white supremacy with your spirit intact, with your family and your people at the front of your mind, and your heart not completely closed to treating each other with dignity. I mean, that's really all it was.
No doubt, real talk.
So what I get upset about is, what happened to you in my mind, which is that, you should, if money and success and currency is valued in hip hop so much, then you should have the biggest bank account in hip hop, and so what I'm concerned about is, while young people do know, as you said, around Michael Jackson, they know good music when they hear it. I'm just a little worried, and I guess I want to hear your insight because you're much, you're more aspirational than me. So I'm gonna take away very carefully what you say. But I worry that, as you said much earlier, you said, words can hurt, they can heal, they can make you feel. And I'm wondering if words can hurt us now, and they're words that we think are there to make us feel good. Like there are words that people are investing in, right? Especially in hip hop, that to me are hurtful words. Right.
Yes.
Not right. They're really meant to be fundamentally hurtful. They're trying to turn them into something positive, but they're basically hurtful words.
Right.
And so I'm wondering if we haven't lost track of which words are hurtful and which words are actually healing in hip hop. You see what I'm saying? And so I worry about, can we turn this moment? Can we turn this corner effectively if we can't tell the difference between those two?
Right. And I know what you mean. We take a lot of things and turn it so that it's a little more comfortable to deal with or listen to or hear. I know exactly what you mean. But this is exactly what I'm saying. The temperature of hip hop, is for the most part negative. You know what I mean? It's the creative the creative flack that the artists get, it is what it is, man. But the artists have to realize, like I was saying, how much we impact the listeners, how much the listeners listen to rappers and mimic them, or take their words to heart.
Yes.
And this is what I'm saying. I'm hoping, what's going on now with the virus and the state of the world right now, I'm hoping this wakes everybody up, because, hip hop is in a bad place. And, it's it's strip clubs, it's money, it's drug talk, and that's all it
Yeah.
is right now.
And you know, it's not their fault. I mean, I don't want to feel like I'm cornering hip hop
no,
artists,
no,
right?
no, it is what it is. I mean,
Right.
you know, I don't want to say that, you know, it's easy to be a product of the environment because, you know, we've been a product of the environment too long. That's an old trick. But yeah, we have to realize, you know, what's holding us back and what's important. And I think with this going on right now, I don't think nobody wants to hear about no strip clubs or, you know, how much money or how many cars you got. So I think the climate is going to change real fast with hip hop because, you know, this is a rude awakening.
Because
You know,
it's
what's important?
embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
Indeed so.
I mean,
Indeed
it's
so.
just like, what was that rhyme, brother? Wait, where are
what
we
was that?
headed tonight?
Exactly. You know,
Oh,
to hear that now, it's like, you know, nobody wants to hear that. And I'm hoping that the hip hop community, you know, feels the same way. You know, it's a good time for consciousness to be back in the music. When I was young, music was a teacher. You know what I mean? We can listen to music and know exactly what's going on in the world. And
absolutely.
you know what I
Absolutely.
mean?
Yeah.
And we need that now more than ever
We
because,
got to
you know,
go.
a
We
lot of
just
people
got to
that have,
go back.
yes,
No, go right.
yeah,
No, I'm just gonna say we
right.
got to go back to a time, brother, where we could flip a word rarely heard and make it
Now
a
it's a
daily
daily
word.
word.
Make it a
Yes,
daily word, brother.
Yep.
That's
that's
what
right.
all the leader is. But I'm gonna be a little bit harsher on a lot of these hip hop artists who I love, but love is about correcting as well as respecting and protecting.
Indeed.
That
Yes,
when you are the caretakers of the greatest tradition of the modern world in dealing with catastrophe with spiritual fortitude, then it can't be just about money. It can't be just about short time. It can't be just about your instant gratification. Because if that were the case,
right,
we never would have got Louis Armstrong. We never would have got Sarah Vaughan. We never would have got Coleman Hawkins. We never would have got Lester Young. We never would have got
right.
Miles. We never would have got Aretha. We never would have got Mahalia Jackson. That's your
That's right.
tradition. We tell our young brothers and sisters, y'all are stepping into this great tradition that's been preoccupied with excellence and style and fun. You see?
Right.
And
Dignity, right.
if exactly, and if you consent to conformity, if you consent to just strip club sensibility, you slapping them in the face, no matter how much money you make, because it's a spiritual and a moral tradition.
That's
It
right.
ain't just about money. Curtis Mayfield cries out from the grave. What about our tradition? That's what our young folk need to hear. Now some of them are listening, don't get me wrong, but in that sense, we got to come hard on them because when you gonna be part of this tradition,
Hey, look,
you
I
got to get
wrote
ready.
I wrote two
Right.
books on hip hop. The first one was about the origins and its incredible genius, and the second one was how it all went entirely wrong in the commercial arena.
And
And
both of them are classic. Both of them are classics now. Absolutely.
and the second one, you know, basically, you know, I have a whole thing about this notion of beware the manipulation of the funk, right? That basically
Yes.
what commercial hip hop did was take the most powerful, you know, music tradition and rewrite the meaning of it by changing the story on the top of it completely. And
Yeah.
that the story that replaces the stories in existence before are pretty much funky versions of racist stereotypes, pretty much. I mean, it couldn't be a better Trojan horse to come in and take the tradition. But the thing is, you know, that tradition that you talk about, Cornel, that Rakim has been so amazing at straddling and being a part of, right?
Just take it to the heights. Take it to the heights.
Right. But I mean, in hip hop, to bring those other voices and styles in.
Yes.
But at the same time, you know, the pressures are different. Why? I mean, Rakim, I mean, we're going to talk as if I know his, you know, touring schedule, but back in the day, you know, cats could tour in basically Black venues in Black communities around the country, right?
Yes.
And they could
Yeah.
have a musical life that was economically sustaining. But one of the great deaths of integration, right, has been the integration of dominant ways of thinking about Black people in the sense of selves as the only market available. And so I'm concerned about those market values penetrating our consciousness and young people asking for it more and more as if it's their authentic way of being. I don't even know how to fix that. That's why I loved your affirmation there, Rakim, because, you know, maybe this will be the moment, right? That people say, you know, we don't really need this. This is a sign of what they want us to focus on.
Right. That should be clear now more than ever. What's you know, hurting us, or what's, you know, killing the community. What's, you know, we really need to focus on that and really understand what's important right now. And if this right here don't wake people up, then Dr. West, you're gonna have to run for president, man. And you know what I mean? It's like, you know, in other words, music ain't gonna do it. You know what I mean? And if this don't work, music ain't gonna do it. Dr. West got to run for president, and we need conscious brothers that understand what's going on, man, and can tell, you know, the world what they need to hear. And it's not you know, it's not a bitter thing.
No.
You know, we not bitter about nothing. We just,
That's right.
We just
That's
want,
right.
We, you know what I mean? We just want things to be, you know, somewhat equal, if it could be, man. We just want rights. We just want things to go, you know, back to some kind of normalcy, man. And at this point, politics ain't gonna do it. Politics ain't gonna do it. We need somebody that can just speak reality right now, and you know, put some things on the table and straighten some things out, you know. And I think that's the only way that people are going to start listening. I think people are kind of fed up with the way society works and the way things is, and I think people just want, you know, the truth. They want to hear, you know, something that's conducive to, you know, their way of life, not something that's gonna you know, sound good, you know, for the next presidency term. You know, something that's really going to help, something that's really going to change things. You know what I mean?
Like
with
truth telling. With that truth telling, no, brother.
That's right. You know what I
mean?
But
that's at work in your timeless work, though. But when folk understand, especially young people understand, for example, you know, Pee Wee Ellis wrote "Cold Sweat" on a bus from New York to Cincinnati. And when he and James finished the song, they had one microphone for the whole band and changed the history of modern music in Cincinnati at King's Records. Now, see, so in other words, they got very little to work with, but look at what came from
it. That's right. That's
see,
right.
We are people who wrestling with catastrophe and take it and transform all of that trauma and that terror coming at us into creative vision, spirituality, energy, love, service, sacrifice, ready to live and die for something bigger than us. Allah, God, something.
Right.
And that's that spiritual crisis. And I wish we had time to talk about why is it that in the latter part of the 20th century, the deepest black folk like Malcolm and Muhammad Ali and Brother Rakim are Islamic brothers. And I raise this as a Christian because I love y'all like I love my Christian and anybody else. But there's something going on with Islam in the history of black people that channels this unbelievable creativity and self-love into genius.
You know what, Dr. West? One of the things that I think can answer that question is, the deeper that I got into studying Islam, I fell in love with one word, and it's a word that every righteous person should know, and it's the word humility. And I think once we understand that word and can embrace that, that's the mentality. You know what I mean? And that's what kind of puts you in a position where, you know who you are. You know you're not the best. You know you can be better. You're compassionate about things. You're respectful to people. You know what I mean? that word is a word that I think anybody trying to strive for any form of righteousness should know. Humility.
Mm,
You know what I
Humility.
mean?
mm.
It's a
Yes. And I
powerful
think,
point. It's a powerful
yes.
point.
Yeah.
And that's one of the words that's big in Islam. And I think, we kind of embrace that and know that
Mm,
that's, not only a word, it's also a way of life, you know.
right. So, so tell me, what music inspires you now from other people, not necessarily in hip hop? Who are you listening to either because of what they're doing musically or what they're doing lyrically, or maybe it is an MC that you think is coming up that, is really going to change things in a certain way. But what's been inspiring you and helping you hold on, especially now, especially given what we've been seeing?
Well, not to dodge the question, but I still listen to my classic R&B and my jazz. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you gotta stay
That,
true. You gotta stay true to who brought you here, right?
that's right. You know what I mean? And what music like, gives you the feeling more than that, right now.
Mm,
And
mm,
and like for me, um, it brings back a lot of, memories, a lot of feeling, I
mm,
miss my parents. And to them, I contribute all my success, So like
mm,
for me to go downstairs and play a jazz record, um,
mhm,
my mother loved another singer, Lou Rawls.
Oh yeah, from Chicago.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You know what I mean? So the other
Oh
mhm,
day,
Lord, yeah.
I word up. So the other day I went and played a little Lou Rawls and tripped over um what is it? The imagination. My imagination. And just to hear that song,
Oh
my
yeah.
yeah,
imagination once. So
no,
you talking
no,
about
not
Smokey
that one.
Robinson?
No, not that. From Lou Rawls.
Yeah, the
Pure,
Lou
pure,
sang
pure
Oh,
imagination.
imagination. Pure
oh,
imagination.
right,
Pure
right,
imagination.
right.
He
Yeah,
did a
yeah.
version of that. My mother used to
Mm,
play it all the time. But I played it, the other day, and it takes me right back to my basement, where my mother and father had their music, and
Mm.
I could smell the collard greens and the chicken, and frying in the kitchen. I
Yeah.
just feel like songs like that, man, just take me back,
mm,
and I could feel my mother and father, and it just make me feel good, man. But
mm.
as far as new
That's
artists, yeah,
yeah.
But as far as new artists, I try to, I'm still a fan. I try to keep my ear, on the street to see what the young artist is doing right now, and
Mm,
I like a lot of the R&B young ladies that's coming out right now. They doing a
yeah.
good, promoting good R&B music. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I just love hearing good music. And like I said, I'm in the process of finishing up my studio, so I'm also kind of I like to renew my music history around album time when I'm doing an album, so I can get all
Mm-hmm.
them good feelings back and
Oh yeah.
everything. What I mean? It reminds me of growing up, things that I went through, but more importantly, man, the lessons from my mother and father, and just listening to a couple hours of that, man, puts me right
Mm.
where I need to be. So
Bringing that back.
yes,
So,
yes,
you mentioned your basement, and as soon as you mentioned your basement, I started thinking about how much I remember, when Paid in Full came out, that it sounded like the whole thing was made in a secret Batcave basement. You know,
well,
it didn't sound like it was in a studio. It was like, I mean, it was like an altered space, both the beats, the way
well,
you sounded, the time of it. Was there an attempt to kind of recreate a certain kind of feeling in the sound of that album that was intentional, or was I just dreaming?
no, I guess that's one of the effects it had. I think it was different at the time. A lot of the samples we used and the way we did it.
Mm-hmm.
We used samples, but we tried to build it up and make it sound big, using good drums, of course, and good sounds. But we had an engineer, Patrick Adams, that was old school, and he was involved in a lot of classic R&B records back in the day. So we was able to make the record sound big. We used a lot of different techniques at the time that hip hop didn't really, know about, because we had the secret weapon, Patrick Adams. You know what I mean? But we did it at Power Place Studio in Queens. The first two singles was done at Marley Marl House.
Right. That's right. Which goes to right in his sister's house, right, in Queensbridge.
That's right. You know what I mean? And it definitely had that, that hip hop like basement production.
Yeah, like a laboratory, like a homemade laboratory.
That's
It's like Pee Wee on the bus from Cincinnati, It's the same. It's the same
Pee
logic.
Wee working on that thing, building on Miles Davis. So what? Here come Cold Sweat, but working with what you got and taking it to a whole new level. Like Sly Stone. That's it.
That's right.
That's what y'all were doing. You and Brother Eric, man.
Yeah,
y'all were doing.
It's a blessing that the project came out, as good as it did. At that time I was 17. I never been in the studio.
Unbelievable, brother.
And I had just turned 17. I never been in the studio before. It wasn't no manual on the wall. I was in there looking to see if they had any, advice for me. I'm trying to act like I know what I'm doing, so I don't want to ask too many questions.
Yeah.
But there was no manual. There was no manual on how to make a, successful hip hop album, man. So we just, everything from the heart. We put down what we thought was hip hop. We put down what we thought would be, good music. We put down what we thought people would gravitate to, and
But you stayed true to yourself against pressure, right? To sound like the MCs of the moment. And
yes.
right. I mean, you were the first to come with that, as Cornel said, that cool. I mean, it was really like you were talking in somebody's ear. I mean, you could play it as loud as you want, but it would be like you were standing right there, basically talking right in your ear. And you didn't get all heated. You didn't get all hot under the collar. You didn't start spitting on your microphone. You could see that you weren't spitting on it just from how you was talking. And you were pressured, right? I mean, Marley Marl tried to get you to sort of sound like, get more energy, right? Get more pumped up. But so how did you have the willpower to stay true, both in that moment, all the way through, all the way past gangster rap, when I'm sure you were supposed to go get a gat and run it, gun everybody down.
Kill everybody,
Could you just change your mind? Change your mind. You know what I'm saying? So how did you stay true? Like, what did you use to rely on to help you navigate? Because the pressure in the industry is relentless. And the lure of the money and the prestige that they're going to give you for this small sacrifice, right? But how did you do it?
Well, like early when I went to record the song in Marley Marl's house, at that point, I kind of I was getting into my own at that time. I understood who I was as a person. I was, becoming a young man at the time. And watching things around me and people around me, I realized that I was a little, laid back. I mean? I was a little more, I was a little, I don't want to say, I kept my distance from people, but I was, a little laid back, a little cool with what I done, man. And I realized that was me. You know what I mean? I couldn't be, the way my friends act, and some of the flamboyancy and the craziness. That wasn't me. So I started padding my style, and I realized that if I can show me through my work, then it would be easy. I figured that would be my advantage. You know what I mean? Can't nobody be me. Can't nobody think like I think. Nobody's gonna say exactly what I say if it comes from my heart. So, I realized I couldn't be Melly Mel. I couldn't be Kumo D, Grandmaster Caz, and
Turns
you
out
know,
that was a very good thing that you that you couldn't be.
that's word up.
That
But you know, I had to find me as we was recording the track. You know, I was sitting on the couch. The music was in the living room, so I'm sitting down on the couch, and he started the track, and I sat there and started rhyming. So he let. So this is the first time he heard me rhyme. So he let the first verse go all the way to the end. So then when he got to the end, he stopped the track. He was like, "Yo, that sounds pretty good, but could you stand up and give it a little more energy?" So I was like, no, first he asked me to give it a little more energy. So we went back to the top. He started the track, and I think I sound the exact same the next time he started. So the next time he said, maybe if you stand up, you know, you can give it a little more energy. So at this time, I'm kind of realizing what he's trying to do. So I said, Marley, man, I said, I can stand up if you want. I said, but it's going to sound the same way. So he was like, you can't put a little. I said, I can, man. I said, but, you know, this is how I wrote the rhyme. This is how I wrote it. And this is how, you know. So he got a little frustrated with me a little bit, I could tell. He recorded half the song, and then MC Shan came over. And then Shan recorded the rest of it, right? So I could tell he spoke to Shan in the kitchen. He said, yo, try to get him to put some more energy into it. So Shan comes in, starts recording. He stops it. Yeah, yo, G, it sounds good, but yo, put a little more energy into it. So I'm like, I said, Shan, man, you know, I told Marley the same thing, man. This is the way I rhyme, man. So long story short, we finished the record. The record comes out, and then we're doing the show with the Juice Crew, Marley Marl, Shan, and everybody's there. So I see them at the back door as I'm getting out the car. So I walk up to them. I get over to them, and they say, you know, they smile and they say, yo, we get it now, man. Shan and Marley standing right at the door. They was like, we get it. And I was like, thank you, man. They, you know what I mean? But I'm glad that I stuck to my guns because, again, you know, I was understanding, you know, who I was and how to express myself through music. You know, I rhymed for, you know, a few years before that. And I think I rhymed like everybody else rhymed in the neighborhood. You know what I mean? But I think I was becoming a young man and realizing who I was, realizing I was a little different than everybody else, a little subdued with my character and a little laid back. So I wanted to express that cool. And listening to jazz, I knew that wouldn't be a problem because, you know, Miles Davis and all these brothers had no problem with expressing cool. So I said, yeah, that's me. You know what I mean? And, you know,
see, that's
later,
beautiful.
as things, you know, was changing in hip hop, you know, like you said, going to the gangster rap and things of that nature. At this point, you know, you can't tell me nothing. You know, nothing.
Yeah, well.
No, you know, and no disrespect, but not even Dre could, you know, make me go gangster rap. You know, I know who I am.
Yeah.
And I know what people expect from me at this point. And you know, changing is not an option. You know what I mean? So
Well, I know you have said though that Juice is your favorite. I know
Juice.
all of us have our favorite. The Juice is your favorite.
That's
That's kind of like Curtis Mayfield Superfly in terms of dealing with the street now. You're dealing with Tupac in the movie. You like the lead song boy. And so there you're able to still connect in a deep way with the street because you love the people.
Yes,
and
sir.
Yet you still got your integrity and your voice. Say a little word about Juice though, brother.
Yeah, that was a real good project, man. I remember they called me up and they said they wanted me to come down and view the movie. So they had a small viewing place in Manhattan. I went down and watched the movie. So I'm sitting there thinking, like, you know, the movie's over. They're not gonna ask me to be in it. So, you know, why do I have to watch it?
Well, you done turned down 8, 9 roles already. You turned down 9 roles already.
And I think and I'm pretty sure they called me to be in Juice as well. But you know, I'm like, well, you know, what do they want me for? If they want me to do a song, I don't think they would want me to, you know, see the movie. So they wait till after the, I view the movie and they come over to me and tell me that they want me to write the title track. So I was like, oh, okay. And that amped me up because now I can tell this story that relates to the movie, but it's covered with reality.
Right.
I could have just glorified what I've seen, but to me, it was a chance to, speak to all the little kids or the people that's going through the same thing, man. It's, selling drugs, getting caught up in negativity and doing the wrong thing. This was my chance to kind of, take the conversation to the next level. So I remember, man, I caught a cab home. I was living downtown Manhattan at the time, and rushed in my little music room. I used to always buy records, and I put them to the side when I found something to sound good. Not knowing what I was going to do to them, but I always just had a stack. Like when you come up with something, here's a good stack. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was ironic. I get home, I pull the stack out. The first record that I pulled out, boom, doo doo doo. I stopped, sat back, like, whoo, here we go. I mean, like, I got it. So I sampled that record up right quick and immediately started to remember what I seen and how I wanted to interpret Juice. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And it's funny. I took the concept Juice and switched it to Know the Ledge.
Yeah.
Because that's where I was going. Like and it was ironic at the end of the movie, he fell off, a ledge of a building.
Right.
So, all right, know the ledge, knowledge, know the ledge.
Yes.
Knowledge. You know what I mean? So I said this perfect
That's powerful.
chance for me to. Yes, sir.
Yes. Yeah, that's beautiful.
That's powerful, man.
So I said it's the perfect time for me to kind of get my point across and tell these young brothers that, what they think is gold is actually not gold at all. And that
Not
was
at all.
perfect. Yeah, and that was a perfect platform to do it, man. So that was one of my songs because when everybody wanted to be gangster, I was able to talk gangster talk and justify it though, with a meaning and this is what can happen. But I was able to kind of let the brothers that's talking the gangster rap know, like, yeah, that sounds good, but at the end of the day, it just sounds good. You know what I mean? And
Right.
that,
I mean, you were, yeah, that's beautiful. You were not against talking about gangster realities in the world, right? You were never against that. You were against the glorification and celebration of the gangster that we're asked to be. That's a very different rejection. You're not saying you want to have Pollyanna, happy-go-lucky fantasy world. The streets is the streets. I mean, you're not naive about that. So, I mean, you were able to basically say, I can tell this story. I can report on this story with a critical mind from the vantage point of someone who's not going to be sucked into it and tell you as much or more than you might have found out from somebody who was trying to tell you it from, from a position of love of the streets. You see what I'm saying?
So.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
No, that's been a beautiful thing. Man, well, you're, I mean, everyone always asks me who's my favorite MC, and it's always you. And I actually have an edited collection called Microphone Fiends.
Wow.
So unfortunately, the whole book isn't about you. It should be, but I definitely used the title. I was like, I'm gonna get the title in here. But so tell me, what is your favorite line of what is your favorite rhyme scheme of all time in your own collection? Like, what's the line you're just like, how did I come up with that? That's the one. Or it could be, we may not even know it. It might be at home in your secret pile. But what is that phrase or that couple lines that you just still get excited about?
That's a good question because, when you're trying to, become great, I always been my worst critic. So I would write stuff and look at it and you know, I would wait and get a chance and ask somebody, yo, how that sound, man? That sound all right? You know what I mean? I was always my worst critic. But there was one rhyme, there was one line that I said, I mean, that, you know, that I wrote, and as I was writing it, I said to myself, okay, I'm getting somewhere now. But you know, when I think about it now, it wasn't that, you know, technical, but it was just, you know, at that point of my career, I was trying to learn different ways to write and how to, but the phrase was, go manufacture a match to me after a blast of a master that has to make musical massacres.
Woo!
And the reason why I love that little phrase is because I was learning how to delete suffixes and prefixes and say things without having to
say it all
and line it up. You know what I mean? And say this means that. So I was learning how to, you know, express myself in what I felt was a deeper way without the decorations. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that verse, that little phrase right there kind of you know, and like I said, I was always my worst critic, but that one there, I was like, yeah. You better watch out.
That you know you elevated when you're writing for yourself, when you're just writing to impress your darn self. The rest of us can't even keep up. I know this is not even a complex line, but when you say I hold the microphone like a grudge, it's just something about, I mean, I still love that line, you know, it's just, I can just see you holding the mic like a grudge. And it's just the idea of like, you know, I'm not going to forget, you know, I'm going to remember.
All right, thank you.
So I mean, it's been such a blessing to have you on the tightrope.
We're
just so happy to have you and hear your thinking.
It's an honor. It's an honor, you know. I appreciate what y'all are doing. We need more of this. And whenever I'm around Dr. West, it's like, you know, I get nervous. You know, he's like the overseer. You know, he's like the uncle that comes over, the no nonsense uncle that, you know what I mean, make sure that you on your job, and if you ain't,
who are you telling?
You know what I mean? I respect you so much, man. You know what I mean? I just you know, it's an honor to be, you know, on this platform, man. Keep doing your thing. We love you. We need you. And you know, I appreciate what y'all's doing, man. Tricia, I need your books.
I'll send them to you. No doubt about it. They'll be in the mail today.
Please.
Brother, we love you, we respect you, and we thank you for enriching our lives, man.
Thank you,
absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm telling you,
you're one of the main reasons I decided to write about hip hop in the first place.
You just don't know. You enrich our lives, man. Keep us going. You know what I mean?
Right. And we need you. We need you out here.
That's the truth. Because you and your precious family. You and your
exactly. We definitely need you. So yes, come back and join us. All right. Anytime something's on your mind, or you just want to come say hi, and don't be nervous. Cornel's incredibly brilliant, but he makes you feel smarter than you actually are. So I don't know how he does it, but don't be nervous, because he makes us all feel better.
Word up. We need that.
You know, don't we? We need that. We need that.
We in it together.
All right. It was
the
fantastic
greatest of all
to
time.
see you. Lovely.
Greatest of all time.
School's in session, and
school's in session. We're gonna jump right into it.
We need to educate some people, because we got some crisis nonsense going on around here. I don't know if you heard recently about the whistleblower claiming that ICE has been giving completely unnecessary and mass numbers of hysterectomies to detainees at the border and elsewhere. And Dawn Wooten is the name of the whistleblower, who's a nurse at the ICE facility in Georgia. And she filed a complaint with the Department of Homeland Security, claiming not only medical neglect, but this, medical violence and, genocide, if you ask me. I'm putting words in the mouth of the claim right now. But, as I was saying at the outset, it's like every day, it's like an insult to the integrity of your own body, of your own sense of psyche, your own physical self, the idea that it's not bad enough to be detained. It's not bad enough to be under armed guard and also to be subjected to sexual violence. There's rampant rape and other forms of sexual violence, but then also to have your entire reproductive capacity be completely ripped out for absolutely no reason. And it just goes on and on and on. But what would you want people to really to think about in relationship to this? Well, what's the frame that we should have beside my depressed outrage right now?
But I'm with your outrage though, but this is what fascism looks like. And this is one particular manifestation of it. Now, of course, there's a long tradition of eugenics in the United States, 31 states that had laws that allowed for reproductive violation and injustice, that allowed for sterilization. We know one of the greatest freedom fighters of the 20th century, Fannie Lou Hamer, underwent the same kind of operation without her consent, same kind of violation without her consent. And so I'm glad that there's a focus on this. I hope that we can sustain the focus. We're going to sustain it on the tightrope in our dialogues. Yeah. But it's an attempt to go at the most vulnerable, our vulnerable immigrant sisters, our vulnerable indigenous sisters, our vulnerable Black sisters.
Yep.
Long, ugly tradition of that kind of fascist treatment. But now you see it's taking place in the age of Trump. So it's now connected to other fascist developments calling into question the legitimacy of elections, calling into question the rule of law, calling into question any kind of accountability, no matter who it is. So it becomes one dimension and element of all these other elements and dimensions.
Right.
And this is what makes it even more terrifying.
Not only more terrifying because of the unregulated violence, but also because it's under the context of privatization, right? You could, these private detention centers, you can't even get documents and information about what's actually happened. And they deliberately, I believe, sequester these kinds of activities into these privatized spaces, so to propel the agenda that you're describing. But, the other thing is, this is a time when if there's anything we need most, it is the potential trust of the medical profession. And, at this point, it's hard to imagine that people would trust a vaccine, right, for this virus. And yet here we are coming to terms with medical professionals, literally hired by private companies, doing this level of violence. I mean, if anybody has a question about why people of color don't trust doctors or don't trust, medical professionals in general, I mean, here's a very clear recent case of that. For those who don't know, just to remind them, the Tuskegee, syphilis experiments, where using Black bodies to test, to see how long syphilis lasts, what happens, untreating, deliberately not treating men with syphilis, and in some cases giving them syphilis in order to see just how it would damage, harm, and distort and destroy you, right? Just the fact, the desire to experiment on the one hand, and then the other desire to control and stop reproduction, to say, you're not worthy of being here in the future. We're gonna change your future, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just,
absolutely.
I mean, it's a vicious thing. I think it's a vicious
ugly thing. We've talked before about Sister Harriet Washington's medical apartheid. Keeping track of that very ugly history and ways in which it is still manifest today. And we have to be vigilant about it, because we're just being attacked and assaulted on every conceivable front.
Yep. And for those who are interested, Dorothy Roberts has written a lot on this kind of violence against women's bodies, and the use of, reproductive, requiring Black women to, use birth control if they want to, get out of jail, basically, it's a remarkable synergy of political intention to control, contain, and devalue Black life. So when we say, do Black lives matter, or do people of color's lives matter? Well, ask the women who've been detained in these facilities, whether or not that's, worthy of our attention. But I hope this really breaks forward. And this sister is very brave. I mean, whistleblowers, being a whistleblower in general is brave. But now being a whistleblower now, I mean, the full weight, a vicious weight of the government and all of its capacity could easily rain down on you for even telling this truth.
Well, we see that with the trial of my dear brother Julian Assange. You know, I'm a witness in his case, and they're trying to send him to jail for 175 years. Brother Snowden is still in Moscow after all of these years. You know, Brother Jeffrey got out, but he went to jail for 3 years for nothing. Also, many folk trying to be truth tellers and end up, you know, going under or being crushed or mistreated. So we've got to come to the defense of this courageous sister. Very much so.
We do, and we have to figure out how to get more information from the women who've been, you know, detained and what else is going on. And you know, this is also, you know, sexual violence and physical violence against women's reproduction is a hard topic for people to rally around in the same way as other things are.
That's true. That's true.
Because it feels like such an intimate thing, and it feels we've not been trained to see the deeply public political nature of this kind of action. So a lot of people might want to shrink from it, but I just want to encourage our tightrope posse to really think carefully about just how much this, you know, the kind of harm this does, and the permanent psychic scars that could result from it, and also politically what it actually means and what it says, and the ways in which it might discourage any kind of medical care at a time when people literally are dying easily. You know, so anyway, I just want to encourage people to not turn away. It's easier to turn away from sexual violence and medical reproductive violence because of the reasons I was saying. So anyway, I just want to encourage people to stay on it, and we'll do what we can to stay on it too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And connecting it with the fight against homophobia and transphobia, because a lot of times it's the most vulnerable who are precious trans. It's the most vulnerable who are precious lesbians who are attacked, and people feel as if they can get away with it. Now, of course, they're attacking the straight sisters too, of all colors, disproportionately Black and brown and indigenous. But we have to be able to have a moral consistency and a broad vision in our focus and in our solidarity.
Absolutely. And there's no question trans, you know, people are significantly more vulnerable than many other groups in society. And the violence against them is also sequestered and hidden, because it's often about the violent responses to policing one's gender expression. And that violence often has a sexual dimension as a mode of control and a mode of bullying and violence. So it's also something we must not turn away from. I agree.
They are as precious as anybody else.
Yes, indeed. Yep. Well, today was both exhilarating and a reminder, a reminder of what we're up against, a reminder of what we are up against.
That's the truth.
But we got resources. And, you know, Rakim's got his studio going. I'm going to look for some new music to come out of that. He issued a challenge to hip hop, didn't he? He issued a challenge. He said, you know, it's a turning point. And I thought, oh, he must think it ought to be a turning point. So I'm hoping he can see the future. Well, it's been a joy talking with you again, as always, Dr. West.
Always a joy and a pleasure just to learn from you, listen to you. Absolutely.
Well, you inspire us all, and you know, to look at people who come on the show and just see how much they appreciate you and what you've done. I mean, for all the hits you've taken out here, you definitely got people who love you and will never let you go. So this is what we need now, right? We need to remember that. So seeing him be so appreciative and respectful and just really love what you've done for people in the world, you know, that was really moving to me.
That hit me hard. That hit me very hard. It really did.
He's not full of extra words. He's not full of words he don't mean. Has no fluff coming on his story. No, and he says it when he says he really respects what you do. That's what he means.
Lord.
Yes, indeed.
No, it's a blessing.
Well, Thank you,
So
Cornel, for spending time with me today. And thank you, everybody out there, for joining us on the Tightrope. As we always ask you, join the website, sign up, you know, like us, all that social media lingo. Do it all so we can keep talking with you and learning and hearing what you want us to talk about next. And we look forward to seeing you the next time on the Tightrope.